Happy Tuesday, Rodney Wilds. I haven't seen you forever. Feels like it's just been forever.
It's had a nice little vacation or I guess week off with our Thanksgiving and stuff. How's it going with you?
It's going good. Did you did you got some hunting done? I'll just say it for your vacation, right?
Yeah, we end up we typically spend Thanksgiving with some friends in Arkansas at our duck camp, and that's where we were at all week.
That's how fun. How fun is that? I know I went to the store and shot me a piece of ham, so that's what I got. I pulled down a piece of ham. So let's see. Just a few things to talk about today. I know it's going to be, we're in the holiday season, so we're all festive and things are looking filled with hope and frankincense and myrrh and all that kind of stuff. Angie, Miss California girl, how are you today? Look at you. She was in there early. Nice to see your name pop up there. Sorry we missed you last week, but I was out hunting that ham, so that's what happened. The first thing that I wanted to bring up was, what do you have your rates screen share ready?
I actually have it. I'm looking at it, but I guess because I'm on a different network today, I can't share it. But I can review it if you'd like to.
Well, okay. Well, then let's. I mean, I have to have that because it makes me feel good.
That's it. It's the
okay.
It's
ready.
It's the Jackson 5 mortgage rate introduction.
So, I'm ready. Hit me.
We're up 26 basis points today. Obviously, that's we have been seeing a nice trend. I'll say since October, about October, let's see, 19th, we hit our lows. So far this year, and it was 90, let's say this mortgage-backed security at that time, basically if you were buying a 6.5 rate, you were paying, let's say it was paying 98.5. Today, that same rate, okay, 6.5 would be paying 101.5. So that's basically 200 basis points better over since October 19th to what is November 25th or whatever today is, 28th.
28th, right.
So a little over a month's time, we've increased 200 basis points. Where that's a phenomenal, a really good trek back into some good waters, I should say. You know, it's been a rocky road with rates for a bit now. But it looks like we're finally seeing a little bit, a nice movement backwards now.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, by checking the headlines, that drop of I'm going to call it 0.7 of a point because we hovered on 8% long enough to call it that. I mean, wasn't that the largest drop in that period of time for a number of years? You know that.
I'd have to go back and look, but it's significant. I mean, it's like I said, 200 basis points in a little over a month. That's an extreme amount of recovery over the last couple months. I don't know about history wise, but it's been a long time coming. We've seen it go the other way for a long time, so it's nice to see.
But that's all I'm trying to say, and I guess it made me happy that I think what we've learned is that the market fights for its own level. It's like that water seeking its own level kind of a thing. And, when the rates go up like that, people can start saying the sky has fallen. But the market, the people behind that, the desire, the capitalistic system is saying, we really think things are better than that. And that's why the prices come down.
Yeah, I think with the Fed finally being, kind of reaching their goals, getting close to that 2% number that or under that they've been looking forward to so long. And then some of the other economic data was slowing down a little bit. So yeah, anything bad news as far as economic data, jobs and all that stuff, if it's getting worse, it means our mortgage rates are going to get better. So they finally tamed inflation. They finally getting some news that they want to hear, and it's definitely helping some affordability issues in our arena.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever listen to podcasts, but I work out a number of times during the course of the week, and what great time spent while I'm working out for an hour and a half to listen to these podcasts. And I've picked up some really nice facts. One, if anybody's interested in the economy, real estate wise, the Housing Wire podcast is really, really good. Matter of fact, Rodney and I draw a lot of our information from the Housing Wire when it's available. And, but they were talking about what we're going to talk about. That's what got my attention, was about millennials and moving forward. So, but we have some other news, Rodney's breaking news. We're going to call this a fast answer. Man, I'd love to be able to play like that. So here's some news I guess it's good, and it's about the conforming loan limit. It's just out today.
Yes. What is it? It's number 766, something like that. I apologize.
Yes. 766 550 is the new conforming loan limit, and that is up from, if I'm not mistaken, 726 from before.
Yes.
That's right. 726 too. Mm-hmm. So
this
tell
is,
us what.
It's awesome. It just means that we are able to go up to this amount, high 700s on a conforming loan, balance loan, conforming 30-year Fannie Mae fixed loan with that loan balance. You can purchase up, as large as you want to purchase. This is all about the loan amount. Okay. So the loan limit is what makes it a conventional or or what's called a potential. There's also an area, once I see the numbers finally come out, the jumbo may not start till like 810 or something like that. So if you're borrowing between 760 and 810, there's another little product in there, Fannie Mae conforming. But for this purpose, right now, we're talking about this Fannie Mae limit being up to 766. Yeah, that's great news. It definitely helps. It gets a lot of people out of the jumbo world. And the jumbo world is just difficult to qualify for. You can be absolutely perfect borrower, but it's since it's so much money on one loan, there's a lot of I's and T's dotted that the customer has to just have their stuff together. And it's, they're very diligent in underwriting those. So it's good news that Fannie Mae conforming is going up.
But that tells us that the powers that be accept the fact that home prices have gone up, and this sort of lends itself in some ways to an affordability issue, wouldn't you say? I mean,
yeah, since home prices are going up so much, it's like the everyday buyer, I don't want to say is buying $1 million, but in some areas that's the case. I mean, it's crazy to think like that, but $800,000-$900,000 houses are now,
garden variety stuff. That's a sweet spot.
Yeah, very prevalent. So, to me, it looks like Fannie Mae wants a certain portion of the home. They got risk, and they're saying, okay, hey, we want to take care of, the vast majority of the United States, and we can do this under 766,000. And then, hey, if you go above that, then, you have these non-QM loans or jumbo loans that you can get into and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. And that's above my pay grade. But I mean, that's where you get into like piggyback. That's what I used to call them, piggyback loans and stuff like that, right? Isn't that where it's basically
Right.
two loans, right?
Right. Like say if somebody was wanting to go buy like a $1.2 million house and they had
Yes.
20%, which is, 200, 200 something thousand, you still may be a little over that 760 amount for your loan
Yeah.
amount. And you
Right.
could come in and get what's called a second mortgage or a piggyback loan, like you talked about. And it's usually a home equity line of credit. And you just put that behind there, and it's again, you get to go into the conforming bucket, which typically in the past meant it's a little bit easier underwriting and you get a little bit better rate.
Got it. Okay. Because they consider it, the way I have to look at this, all of the numbers that you guys deal with, and I mean this with absolute respect, the numbers that you deal with outline a risk ratio that you feel is tolerable. And so when the conforming loan limit goes up, that means that you can tolerate a little more risk, right? I mean,
Yeah, the way I look at it is kind of more like percentages. It's like since the home prices are going up so drastically, the
yeah,
loan limits have to go up with them.
yeah.
Or else Fannie Mae won't have the same percentage of market share as they did in the past.
And they
So
run, they're running a business like anybody else, trying to attract customers.
right. I mean, they want right. I mean, that's exactly. They're this whole thing is for American home ownership, right? So absolutely.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm just going to do. There we go. You can see me messing with you a little bit. Cool. Okay, so conforming loan limit, got that done. So the first thing that I wanted to, if it's okay with you, to touch base on was, and it occurred to me that the people, a big segment, how do I say this correctly? A big segment of the market that all realtors, lenders, title companies, all that, a big segment of that market is the up and coming home buyers, meaning the millennials and I guess the Gen Zs. Is that right? Is that the way that breaks down? The ones behind the millennials.
Yes.
And I mean, this was something that was mentioned the other day in that podcast that really caught my attention. And what he said was, as far as the housing market goes, and remind me to ask you about 30-year loans in a minute. Remind me to do that. That the housing market in the United States is really lucky because of the millennials. There's such a big group of millennials coming on. Inventory may be low, but demand is going to stay strong for the foreseeable future because of all these millennials that are getting ripe. They're getting ready to move out of the house and move into their first home, that kind of stuff, right? And one of the things that he mentioned, and it caught me by surprise, was I know that you and I talk frequently about when the rates go up, people stop buying. When the rates go down, they start buying, that kind of stuff. But he said it's not the rate per se that causes applications to rise and fall, but duration. It's the duration. And I thought that was really interesting because for all of us, when we're in a buying pattern, if it's a volatile market, and that's what they're talking about when they sell a volatile market, it's up and down, everybody gets on the sidelines.
Right.
And at any rate, so like this 7.3, here's my point, and I'll let it go. I was just really excited to hear that about the data, because it's not necessarily tied to the rate, because we've said a year ago that even if the rates were high like they are now, I consider them high compared to the 3 is 7% and 7.3. after a period of time, if you leave it alone, people will get used to that 7.3 and call it decent. Not good,
Right.
but decent. And that's what I'm hoping for moving forward into this next year, is stability in that fashion. That's where I'm coming from.
Like you're saying, millennials, help me out here. What I am, when it comes to millennials and stuff, I am a little off target. What age group is that in? Like,
I can tell you. The millennial, bear with me. Somebody's out there. I know how to do this. Hang on. There we go. It is come on. I know the answer to this. It's a matter of finding it out, of digging it up. Hang on. Can you sing? Can you sing? I had this pulled up and I lost it. Between 1980 and 1999. 1980 to 99. Right.
80
yes.
and 99. Okay.
Correct.
All
yes.
Right. So those 80 and 99 millennials, they were born between 80 and 99. Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in 2022 marked the first time that more than 50% of millennials were homeowners, according to recent U.S. Census Bureau data. Many millennials took advantage of the low interest rates and increased opportunities for remote work and entered the housing market. Now, let me do something here.
All right, so I was just trying to grasp what you were saying on your point. Your point was that you're hoping, or that they're hoping, that the millennials kind of get used to the 7% and then therefore start entering the home buying process at a faster clip in the upcoming.
That's correct. That's correct. In order to keep the industry alive, we got to have people that are going to be buying houses,
right?
And I'm multitasking here, so that's why if I stall out, okay, that's that. Yes, and Gen Z is behind those guys, so they're the slightly younger group. All right, so. But here's how things have changed. And here's another thing about millennials, because what I'm trying to do as a professional, you and I as professionals, we've got to understand what the millennials going through to help them be confident if they want to move forward buying a house. I mean, that's just what it is. Right. And, is that pure sales? I maybe, but still, we've got to be able to paint a clear picture that's understandable to our customers so they can make a solid buying decision.
Right.
That was really good. I'm glad this is recorded. Got that written down. But what is it that millennials have gone through that creates this skepticism? And the fact is, for their adult life, big chunk of it, they've gone through a market that has crashed and burned and then grown, and then we get into the 2000s, it goes out of range, and then it tanks to where we are now.
Yeah,
it's no wonder with the 08 through 2012, the build up for 10 years. It's no wonder that millennials have this fundamental skepticism that the housing market might be solid.
No, that's an excellent point. You're right. I mean, if you look at those years, now we did have an unprecedented run after the 08 until a couple years ago. So they definitely, but if they've waited till then, they're like, yeah, they're only seeing the bad stuff. It's like, well, because they missed out on all the other stuff in between.
Well, and you know what? When you think about this, Rodney, and this isn't a negative thing. It's just we're making, at least in my opinion, I'm trying to make observations, trying to piece together the puzzle. There's nothing I dislike more than somebody that's trying to pump sunshine up my skirt and make me think that, it's warm weather. That's,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. And to see this run up that we did, that you just talked about over this last few years, only to see it come unglued. Now, granted, COVID, government intervention, maybe some bad calls, but the fundamental part is it came unraveled. It just did. It just did. So it's not bulletproof. That's the lesson that I would get. And then we have this point of qualifying income. When we're talking about qualifying income required for the average starter home rose to $96,000, and I bet it's even more than that a little bit in the second quarter of 2023. But in 2020, you only had to earn only $49,000 to buy a starter house. I'm calling a starter house, I'm making this up because they don't say, 250 to maybe 3.
And then now it takes over 100 or 90, whatever it is.
96 or I bet it's more than that. And hang on, I'm all pumped up now. Get an answer. Yes. Yeah. So Gen Z, and there's an important point there. Gen Z is from 97 to 2010. That's when they were born. Okay. So moving on with millennials, how millennials are changing the market. The millennial home buyers have to understand their experience of the housing market, which we just talked about. And it's up to us to help them understand that it's probably safe. I've got a video coming out here in a few days, and it's called, Should We Downsize the American Dream? And the idea behind the video is that no matter who you are, if you have the ability, and Rodney, cut me off, man, if you jump in, please. Through the growth that we've seen over the past decade or whatever it is, I've seen, and I've sold a lot of houses to people that were, I thought way too young. Years ago, they're buying $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 houses, and they're 26. I'm like, what are you? Well, I didn't say anything. It's their choice, and that kind of stuff. Is God darn, that's a lot of house. That's a lot of house.
Yeah.
And you get used to that. Now, of course, that they were in places that. I heard something the other day. In Atlanta, they have a phrase called "drive till you can afford the house." That's what that's called. So you start driving away from the center of town until the prices get to what you can tolerate. But with everything that's gone on, and I'll stop here in a second, is that for those people that I felt like they were overbuying the meat, well, now people are thinking, I can't afford to buy it all. But if you don't plant your flag, get started someplace with a starter home and the definition has changed. But instead of looking at these 800, these McMansions to get a really honest to gosh, like Franklin, 1,500 square foot house, that kind of a thing. Price range, probably not. But to downsize the American dream gets you started in that valuation where you can start making money. Is that I'm worn out?
No, I love that topic of that. I think it's, the problem is, to me is I like it because you've got, like you said, you got to plant your flag. If you're not in so far through American history, this has been the fastest way for a homeowner or a individual to grow wealth.
Anybody to gain wealth, yeah.
Right. And so I'm not, one of these mega rich investors that just, have all these crazy TikTok stuff you can't even follow, and they act rich. But I want to tell you, these people go out and buy houses, and it protects their family for years to come because it's stopped. They have stopped the uptick in their rent or the uptick in their homeowners. You know, you're locking it in. You've seen what we project on the show what rent is going to be. It's going to be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in 10 years in this area. Now, can you afford that? You know, when you're asking I wouldn't be able to afford that. And I'm like, you crazy? I ain't paying $10,000 a month for rent.
Yeah, and now they're talking about how rent has come down because it's been skyrocketing like home prices. They're doing this overbuild thing. Yeah, there's a lot of rentals. Now.
I hear you, but Andy, it's like, everybody keeps saying that, but we keep having this same issue. It's always rent is always battling. It's always going up against the mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And it's unless you can own, you're not going to stop that clock.
Correct. And when you read a headline that says rents are down, when I was renting back in 2010, it cost me it was a nice in Franklin, so that's upper end. It was $1,200 for a 2-bedroom place. I thought that was pretty reasonable. By the time I left in a couple of years later, it was $1,500. I was like, and that's what caused me to come out and buy my townhome, because it's like, screw you guys, because every February I'd get this letter. Every February. Well, when you buy a house, the only thing that's going to go up, we're going to call standard maintenance, is property taxes,
insurance, that's
insurance
fine.
Maybe a little, yeah.
But it's but it's the only way. I agree with you.
And all right, so then we'll have so affordability has been the challenge for the last. What were we talking about a couple of weeks ago? Getting it. It's right here in the article. Getting help from relatives also remains the way they phrase it, a time-honored way to cross the threshold from renter to homeowner.
Yes, it is. It is. It's the lifesaver. Parents are lifesavers in our industry. Parents, grandparents, things like that. That's absolutely. We see so much of that, and it's needed right now. It's a different era right now.
It is. You know what? And it is. Now, and as I'm going to press forward through this to one of the things that when Rodney and I talk about. Oh, hi, Nikki. Nikki, how are you? You're new here? Welcome. Glad you're here. I was on a rant. I didn't read. Sorry. Rents are going down short term. Let's read this. Whoop. There we go. Yeah, that's exactly that. That's long term. Yeah. That's the whole point. And that's actually the whole point.
And even temporarily in our, if these rates keep coming down in our area is not going to see a big price drop. We're not going to see, and honestly, it's almost like you call it a price drop if it only gains 1 to 2 to 3% right now. It's just not skyrocketing prices, so it is a great time to get one at, I mean, you could find something going a little bit backwards. That's probably because they're overlisted in the first place, but
in the first place. and when we were talking about rentals, you can get, this is the last I'll say about this because I was shocked. I looked into what a 2-bedroom, like I was renting a while ago, they're now $2,500. $2,500.
So it doubled. In 10 or 12 years. That's what I'm saying. They're 3,000 now. They might be 6,000.
I mean, it's a bunch. It's a bunch. Yeah. So what? Hang on a second. Hang on. Yes. And so what's the next thing that's going to happen? Is that the millennials, and I'm so into millennials, we're talking about affordable locations. 63% of millennial home ownership I think I can probably show this. Bing, let's see if this works. Yeah, is 63% is in Grand Rapids, Minneapolis 60%, Cincinnati 57%, St. Louis 57%, Pittsburgh 57%. The U.S. average is 51% millennials on the rate, and then with the lowest rate of millennial ownership is going to be, and this makes total sense. Ange can get it; she can vouch for this.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
The highest priced properties on the earth, which would be, a lot of places in California and New York,
L.A., San Jose, San Francisco, all beautiful places. I mean, I keep saying every week that
expensive places too. Yeah, I mean that's what's going to keep the millennial. You don't want to call them first time home buyer, but they're almost that's them and some move up stuff.
Yeah, and some of the things that I found pretty interesting for what millennials are looking for. And again, the reason I'm having this conversation is they're going to be the biggest subset of home buyers moving forward as they mature more, they get better, their job increases, and then Gen Zers are going to be behind them because what baby boomers going to be doing is really two things. They're going to be downsizing. They're going to be selling their house, downsizing, and then dying. That's kind of what's in the cards for baby boomers. Sorry.
Just one of the two, nothing in between.
I'm sure there is if I took a minute to think about it, but
I hope so. I may be. I don't know what I am. I don't even know what I am.
You're not
Gen Z. I don't know what I am.
You're not. I don't know what you are. You're a good man. That's what you are. But millennials, it said 42% of aspiring millennial homeowners said the key motivation for buying a home would be to accommodate a dog. I've known people like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I mean, yeah, I think people are staying single longer. So yeah, I mean, dogs are, part of the family. I get it.
Yeah. Millennials said that having space in their backyard for their dog influenced their home buying decision more than having kids. And I've sold a number of houses. Got to have a yard. We have to have a fence. Got to have a fence.
Yeah.
Can you build a fence?
Yeah.
Some of the statistics, and we'll jump off this topic. In 26% of U.S. adults were millennials. 26%, according to government data. In 54% of purchase mortgage applications came from millennials, according to CoreLogic. Angie's got diva dogs. From July 21 to 22, younger millennials, those are on the closer end, were more likely than any other age group to start their home buying process by researching it online. It's almost all online now, for sure. 46% of older millennials were first-time home buyers. You were just talking about that. In 22, 60% of 40-year-olds were homeowners when baby boomers were their age. Get this, 69% were homeowners, according to Redfin. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Well, but anyway, so millennials are moving up, and we just got to pay attention to what they need. And that means if you're in business, you got to be able to communicate in the way they want. Because a lot of the millennials, you know who they are, the recent ones that we were talking to, very rarely talk to them on the phone, but it was all text.
Yeah, it's all the millennials, the Gen Zs, I mean, all of them start with the same conversation. It's like everybody wants a house for kind of the core reasons, obviously shelter and things like that. But outside of that, it don't matter if you're millennials, Gen Z, or whatever. You still got to find out, like you said, like if the yard's important, or if it's the location, or they don't care about a yard. They want to be, I don't know, close to a Starbucks or whatever it is.
Right.
it all starts out with the same. This is what's funny about it, is that it all starts out with the same conversations. When you're talking to somebody, you're like, hey, what's important to you? What are you looking for? This kind of thing. And all that's figured out outside of the age limits and names and stuff. So it's cool to understand. One thing that I thought was really good about the article, it puts you in a little bit of perspective of what they've only seen during their,
Their home buying experience.
right. Yeah, what they've seen with their parents' house when they lived in as a kid, and then up to now. So yeah, it's they have. I see why that they could, if they only look at like those two major events that bookend a really good time in between. I see why they could be extremely nervous.
And not to be too PC about it, but I could also see where somebody that's my age that I've seen the 11 and 17%, and I've seen stuff come and go over the decades, and
Yeah,
and anybody that says, well, that's nothing, kid, heck with you, it is something to them. It is,
right, right.
And I kind of
Yeah,
woke up on that. Hi, Philip. Hi, Wendy. How you doing, guys? Happy Thanksgiving. Sorry, I missed it last week, but here Philip's got. He's this smart one on the group. Come on, what's going on here? Hang on. There we go. I don't know what that's going on. Come on, there we go. Millennials also have a massive amount of debt on credit cards. Well, yeah, I don't think they're alone in that, but
I don't either. I will say this: I called. I've always called them, like the home ready or home possible loan, the millennial loan, because I've always felt like they've had really good credit and just not a very big down payment for the most part. So I don't see a whole lot of millennials with excessive debt. People have excessive debt, but actually the millennials actually have their trend. I see is, and this is just for me, Andy. So Philip's probably got the good stats on this, but like I've always called the conventional 97% loans millennial loans, because it's for the younger. I feel like a younger buyer that didn't have a down payment, but they had credit. They had good credit.
yeah. Well, and I guess that there's sort of a self-sifting and self-sorting proposition that goes on when somebody says they're ready to buy a house. They've probably been working on it for a while. They've thought about it in advance. It's not like they woke up, oh, I'm going to buy a house. I don't think that's the way that happens. And for the millennials that I've worked with in the past, the one in particular comes to mind. He was ready. I mean, he was ready. And millennials, and it's not like I'm glowing on them, but it's a different crew. They're big into research. They know what they want. The yards are for dogs, not kids.
Yeah.
They know how to make money. They know how to save money, and they know what the point is. And this guy was. I would just wish that I could have been as ready as he was at his age when I was his
Yeah.
age. Because I was like, so let's go. Let's talk about just a couple more things and get out of here. What is the mortgage rate? Oh, it's 7.3. Okay. So, and Nikki, I'm glad you're here. And I think there was a question in there. If I'm gonna answer that. This is good. I'm getting my system's getting a little laggy on that. Sorry about that. There's truth to that. There's truth to that. There was another comment made on the podcast. It was, again, the Housing Wire Daily. And they were talking about when rates go down, and stabilize, again, duration over the actual price, the mortgage rate, what they indicated was, and this is again a really data-driven guy. It was a guy that does Altos research. If you've ever heard of him, he's like the data brain. When buyers start coming out of the woodwork, houses are going to be snapped up faster than they're able to come to market, and so that's going to put upward pricing on the upward pressure on the home prices. And his question was, and I thought this was really interesting, and I'm going to use the word crash, but I don't mean it like our buddy Crash Boy. I don't mean it that way. But he said, if house prices don't crash, and by that I mean correct significantly, where does that leave us in the next few years? How long can this really go on? I thought it was a point we've all got to consider, you know. It's what's going to happen, because incomes aren't going to grow fast enough, just like Nikki said, you know.
Right.
See
yeah, the income, yeah, I mean, that's been, we've discussed it a bunch, but income has not kept up with appreciation. And now you've added the rates on top of that, which is just, that was, why the government's been dealing with this housing affordability issue / inflation issue that they've been dealing with for 2 years now. So exactly, they are not, the income, the affordability on it's been something they've been dealing with, and it's here to stay. It's here to stay. It's just, I mean, it is what it is. You can't have these apartments in Manhattan and going for $15 million a piece, and like California is. I mean, these properties ain't ever going to go back to $1 million.
No, but there's got to. But there's going to have to be. What his point was, I think, was through natural attrition, because what I can't wait to see, what I'm looking forward to in terms of the housing market and just the country in general, really, COVID just fouled everything up. It just really threw a wrench into works, with the free money coming in and inflation coming in behind it. And now people are starting to believe that we're going to have a soft landing or that recession is less likely. It's like 62% believe it's less likely to happen now. And so there's these adjustments got to be made where people can afford to live and to buy properties. That's what's got to happen. Right. And so there was this last article I touch on, and then there was just one more, if that's okay. And it was, and it's phrased oddly. It says the housing market gets more bad news. I'm not sure that I read it like bad news, but it said elevated rates are going to keep sellers of previous owned homes out of the market into next year. Got it. It says that sales will bottom out, which we're now down to 3.7 million, which is the lowest it's been. That's a long time it's been that low. That's low sales. Mortgage rates hovered near 8%. Lock-in effect, we know what that is, keeping people in. Yep. October saw prices previously jump 3.4% to a median amount of 392. That's in general. Fourth consecutive annual increase. National Association sales plunged another 4%, and that's going to continue. And that's what my point is. When it's this slow, it's going to get slower, and there's only one thing that can happen to make those sales happen, and that's going to be, this is my opinion, prices have to continue to drop. Not crash, but correct.
Yeah, I think I'm going back to that survey. I think what's going to get it going is when the rates hit. I think the one thing I think a couple of these articles we've discussed today, they've talked about the lock-in effect and the potential easing of the lock-in effect for the first time that we've heard those kind of conversations in a long time, or ever really. So the easing of the lock-in effect is what, is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen by the rates. more than I think your point of I think people are finally seeing now that 7% is, I don't want to say normal, but it's the new normal,
It's the
right?
new normal. Yeah.
Or it's just unrealistic to think that 3% is going to be available for every. I think people are coming to that term. So as people come to terms with the interest rate, that first study that the lock-in effect, it would take somebody like in the high fives to get them to move. Like 80% of the people said if the rates was in the high fives, they would move. So I think if we can stick around that number, maybe low sixes, we'd be in good shape. I think it's more the rate, because I just don't think there's not enough inventory. And I'm not well versed in all around the country on inventory. I do know our area okay. And Andy, there's not enough inventory in our area right now. I don't think if rates were to come down and there's any significant push, our rates are we will be back into a buying frenzy if rates hit. I mean, it would be back into where first-time homebuyers wouldn't have another chance again. We'd go back to crazy offers and stuff like that in a heartbeat.
And that really was. I wish I could remember. He had a really long last name. I can't remember. His first name is Logan, but he's a data analyst. And that's his whole point, that if rates drop to back in the day, like you said, 5, 4.5, all of a sudden everybody be jumping in and all the houses would get sucked up. And then the people that were thinking about buying, they go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
then it is just turned into this mess again.
Right. Instead of, in my opinion, the people do research, and if they do, from my number, what numbers, if they do the research on the house and appreciation and guard against, the inflation that they're going to see in rent increases, buy with a terrible rate, buy with a high rate of 8% or 7.5%, whatever it is right now. You're getting in the game, and then you can manage that debt later. But, this is, like I said, I always have to preface that with two things. One is I'm talking about somebody buying this house for a long-term purchase.
Right.
Primarily they're going to live in it. And, it's not a, I'm not looking to flip them. I don't care what my house value does in 6 months or a year. I'm going to be there longer than that. You just manage your debt.
And brings us back to kind of the point where we started out with planting the flag. Should you downsize your American dream?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to when I say downsize, I don't mean, what's the word I'm looking for? To downgrade, I'm not saying that. If you had your eye on a 3,000 square foot house, that's maybe not going to happen, but a 2,000 square foot or 1,800, God, I can't tell you, I raised a family in an 1,800 square foot house.
I grew up in a 900 square foot house with 5 of us.
We had plenty of room, and it's going to turn into that walking through snow uphill both ways thing, But my point on that is that everybody that I know, other than people who didn't manage well at all, everybody I know that has owned a home has at some point down the road, after they've been in it for a few years, and then they ask the question, well, I wonder what this thing's worth. Because remember, value means nothing unless you sell it. It means nothing. It's paper. It's vapor. Mm-hmm. And they'll look at it down the road, and they bought for $250. All of a sudden, it's worth $5. What did you do for that? Lived in it. That was their.
Hey, they had the money to come up with it in the first place. I mean, they made the plunge to do it. That's the reward for it. It's the people who's sitting on the sideline right now, and I get it, man. I get it, and if I get it, but if it was my time to buy, I'd be buying.
Well, and your point, and we'll start to shut down with this, but your point is well taken. We're not suggesting in the least that if somebody's not ready, do it anyway. That is not what we're saying. And I've gone on this long. My name's Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here at Williamson County. I'm talking to Rodney Wilds. He's a lender in Williamson County. If you have questions, our contact information is all over this thing. But we're not suggesting to go out and do something that you're not prepared for. However, if you've been thinking about it and it's something that you want to do, instead of, wow, I can't get what I wanted, get what you can, and you'll be glad. I can't tell you about the equity that I have in my house. Again, it's a vapor, but it's still something, you know?
Well, if you're a young family or and you're growing, and usually that's a lot of times what you are, or you haven't started your family yet and you're going into home ownership.
Oh,
This is not your forever home. You're not, this is not your forever home. So, but you need something. It's better than renting until you get your house that you want. It's like, man, just go get something, start earning some equity, and then get the second purchase, upgrade. But in the meantime, you're gonna have all that equity you've earned, and just whatever you're not paying in rent, you're saving. So
yeah, yeah. And that's, I guess if there was a theme, I'm grateful. This podcast, it was really good. You can tell it had an impact on me. I'm really grateful for the millennials and the Gen Zs that are coming along, and I want to do everything I can to help them, get a piece of the American dream, even if it's slightly adjusted on that kind of thing.
yeah.
Because
I mean, they're it's a great time. I mean, they're gonna get to experience, as soon as they get one, they're gonna get to experience 40 or 50 years of equity building in a house, or and possibly keep their first one and move into a second one and have a couple houses. So
yeah,
they get the same thing everybody else gets. They're going to get a roller coaster at times, and then they're going to get really good times. I mean, this market ebbs and flows. It's what it is. It's a financial market. It's real estate, but it's always been good. I mean, but it's going to go down some point in time, but it's always going, it's always came back.
And I think that this is the way I would end that particular situation. The theme for me, and I'm gonna keep a close eye on this moving forward. It's a new theme for me because I thought everything was price point driven, which I think that's part of it. But I think the duration there's a strong argument for if things are stable, they seem safe, and people can make decisions when they feel safe. And having gone through everything that we've gone through here this past few years, I'll bet you that Jerry and his crew and the American economy, all the powers that be, are going to do what they can to just let the dust settle for as long, let capitalism, God bless America, take over and do what it's going to do with home prices and all the rest,
Yeah, I think it's showing. I think it's it's had an effect on the market. It's slowed the real estate down to significant levels, and it's done what it's needed to do. Inflation's coming down, so
yeah. And now as they ease up, the accelerator will come on, but just at the proper amount. Rodney, that was great. I enjoyed it every minute of this. I just wanted to throw out for anybody that I'm gonna shoot a link to everybody if they want to read something it was just kind of an interesting article. It's called Keeping Current Matters, and this it says the top 3 housing market questions are the top 3 housing market questions on your mind, and we'll address these as we always do moving forward in the future. But the 3 questions, won't go into detail on them, are what's next for mortgage rates? It's going to be a good question. Number 2, where are home prices headed? I think they're coming down a little bit. And is a recession around the corner? And I think the answer to that is no. So, but it's just an article for you to read offline if you like that kind of thing. So, any other thoughts, Rodney? I'm all sweaty. I got off track there.
No, I read that article too. It's a pretty good article. I thought the title was weird though. It just says "Are the 3 questions," not what are the questions. Is this 3 questions? It just says "Are the 3 questions." I'm like, what the heck is it saying? But And then you read the article; it's a normal article, so nothing surprising. Yeah,
No.
it's has
No.
good content in there though.
I think that goes to show you that for a year now, we've been orbiting the idea of home prices, mortgage rates, and recession. I mean, if you summed it all down,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah, affordability, yeah, all that, yeah.
Yeah, you could kick in, the Fed funds rate, but that's been the orbit, and,
Yes.
but that is the orbit. So God bless America, and I appreciate I like this industry, and it just seems, if I seem particularly buoyant, I see a lot of hope in what's happening. I know we're in the middle of it, but we're getting ready to turn the corner. New Year's almost always a good thing. So
Yeah, I believe
Any
so
other-
too. It's yeah, when everybody's talking, I think it's a really good sign when everybody's talking about the loosening of the golden handcuffs, the locked-in effect, whatever you want to call it, because that's what's in our area, in my area here, probably Angie's area, and areas with just the median prices high, cities, that's stifling the sales activity.
Yeah, and final question from Nikki there is, recession is coming. They just keep changing the definition on it. Will it affect the housing market? It would have to have some kind of an effect, and I think that there's different. This is just me, just Andy. I think that there's different degrees of recession. It can be minor, or it can be trouble. And when they talk about soft landing, I think that they're doing plus or minus, whatever.
Yeah.
So will it affect the housing market? I think more in people's heads than in their wallets.
If we let's say that the news say we're in a recession, because that's basically what's going to put us in a recession, is when the news starts saying we're in a recession. It will affect housing, but I think it'll affect it in a positive way, because it's going to run the rates down. In a recession, the mortgage rates, they're going to expect mortgage and housing to pull a country out of the recession. And they would artificially keep our rates low if we hit a bad recession.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any way you slice it, I feel confident in this, that, and I think you just said that, Rodney, is the housing market is the engine that drives the economy.
Yeah,
it just
it's the biggest part of it by far. So
yeah, cool.
Hey, let me ask you, do you know the difference between a recession and a depression? Have I ever told you this?
No.
Recessions when your neighbors loses a job, and a depression's when you lose your job.
Well, okay. And on that note, Angie, always good to see you. Philip and Wendy, you guys are the best. Love seeing you here. Nikki, so glad you joined in. Hope to see you again. We will be here next week, 1:00. Any final thoughts, Rodney?
No, thank y'all for joining. Good to see everybody. Thanks, Andy. Great job as always.
Hey, thanks, you guys. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.